Good evening. Now, I'd like to spend a little bit more time discussing the Dominion voting systems. Do you remember a few weeks back when there was all this talk about voting machines in several states switching ballots? And do you remember that in response to those allegations, the Department of Homeland Security put out this statement saying that the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history? Now, that of course sounded very reassuring, but there was something that they did not disclose to us. But we looked into it and found out for ourselves. Turns out that under the Department of Homeland Security is a council named the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And they're the ones who actually wrote this reassuring statement saying that the election was secure. But there are two members of that council that might sound very, very familiar to you. Dominion Voting System and Smartmatic. Sounds like a conflict of interest to me. This is your 2020 election update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Now, to backtrack a little bit, I want to remind you that in Michigan, there were credible allegations that because of a system error, the Dominion voting systems in one county switched roughly 6,000 votes from Trump over to Biden. Now, this error was of course caught and the mistake was fixed, but obviously when you see a mistake like that, which was supposedly caused because the operator forgot to install a system upgrade, it calls into question the same machines that are being used in all other counties. Now, in response to these allegations, this was the statement that was released by the council, which sits under the Department of Homeland Security. I have it right here in my hands. It reads in part, "There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised." And then it goes on, "While we know there are many unfounded claims and opportunities for misinformation about the process of our elections, we can assure you we have the utmost confidence in the security and integrity of our elections, and you should too." And here is, in my opinion, where it begins to get very, very sketchy. Because now, whenever you question the Dominion voting systems, here's what they do. They email you this statement, which is very official looking. It looks like it comes from the Department of Homeland Security, but it was actually released, unbeknownst to most people, by a council of which Dominion itself is a member. Now, we reached out to the Department of Homeland Security and asked them how much input did the Dominion voting systems actually have in the drafting of this statement, but they haven't gotten back to us yet. But let me give you an example of how this all works in practice. Earlier this month, we here at the Epoch Times were investigating a story which detailed a number of concerns about the integrity of the Dominion voting systems. And in that article, we had a sworn declaration from a man who was both a poll watcher in Georgia, as well as an acknowledged expert on electronic voting security. And he raised three credible, very specific concerns about the security of these voting machines. So while we were writing this article, we reached out to the Dominion voting systems for comment in order to get their take on things. And at first, they didn't reply to us at all. But after our article was published, Dominion came back and sent us an email titled, "Setting the Record Straight, Facts and Rumors." And in that email, they cited this joint statement that was published by the Department of Homeland Security. But nowhere in that email did they actually disclose that Dominion is part of the council that wrote the statement. They just sent it to us as is, as a third-party statement about how safe they are. Who watches The Watchmen? Now, Dominion Voting Systems has refuted any claims about being biased towards Democratic officials during the election, and they recently issued a pretty lengthy statement about it. I'll throw the links to that statement in the description box below this video for you to check out for yourself. And while you're reading that statement, you might see that even there, in their own statement, Dominion cites the joint statement from the Department of Homeland Security without ever revealing their connection to it. Over the weekend, there was a lot of flip-flopping happening over in Georgia. The federal judge over there, who is presiding over Sidney Powell's election fraud lawsuit, he first ordered the state to not erase, wipe, or reset the voting machines that were used in the election. Later, though, on that very same day, he reversed himself, meaning that the officials there could wipe the machines if they wanted to. However, on that very same day, in a third court order, that same judge, he came full circle and he prohibited the officials in 3 Georgia counties from erasing, destroying, or altering any of the Dominion voting machines that were used in the 2020 elections. What on earth is going on over in Georgia? Well, to start with, obviously with the initial order, the judge wanted to keep the machines from being wiped in order to investigate any potential wrongdoing, particularly in light of the allegations that were brought up by Sidney Powell. However, after he issued his first court order, the judge reversed himself because of a technicality, actually. He claimed that these voting machines weren't in the hands of the actual defendants in the case. They were actually in the physical possession of the county election officials. And therefore, the judge reasoned that he didn't have the jurisdiction to tell those officials what to do. However, that decision got so much blowback that late last night, that same judge, he wound up issuing a temporary restraining order which stopped these machines from being wiped clean and it also allowed Sidney Powell to amend her case to actually include the counties who are physically in possession of these voting machines. Now, this decision came just in the nick of time because these machines were actually scheduled to be wiped clean later today, which is Monday, November the 30th. And all of that evidence would have just disappeared. Now, if you're interested in what specific type of evidence Sidney Powell is actually looking for on these voting machines, we discussed that in much more detail in one of our previous episodes, and I'll throw the link to that episode in the top right corner right here for you to check out for yourself. So what's the next step in this Georgia lawsuit? Well, that same judge set Sidney Powell's hearing for Friday, December the 4th. And so we'll have to wait until the end of the week to see what unfolds and what comes out of this lawsuit. I'll throw the judge's court orders as well as the article about this whole flip-floppy affair in the description box below this video for you to check out for yourself. Also, while you're down there looking for that link, take a moment to hit that like button. These videos take the culmination of many hours of investigating. And when you hit that like button that's below this video, it forces the YouTube algorithm to share this video out to thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. Now, I'd like us to take a moment to discuss our favorite tech billionaire, Mark Zuckerberg. He and his wife donated at least $400 million to a certain group, and that group has now been accused of contributing to constitutional violations in key battleground states. So the group that we're talking about is called the Center for Tech and Civic Life, and it's a national nonprofit that's based out of Illinois. So what did this group actually do with Zuckerberg's $400 million? They provided funding to over 2,500 election offices across the country to run elections. Their money was used to pay poll workers, put up ballot drop boxes, and acquire mail-in ballot equipment and supplies. Now, first of all, I don't know about you, but when I first read this report, I was really surprised to learn that poll workers were not getting paid by the state and our tax dollars, but were instead getting paid by a private group that was funded by a left-leaning tech billionaire. But it actually gets a lot weirder than that. According to lawsuits filed this month, more than $6 million was doled out to officials in Fulton County, which is in Georgia, as well as to 5 cities in Wisconsin. Now, to start with, according to this lawsuit, accepting funding from a private group like this is barred by state and federal law. But it goes much further, because the lawsuit alleges that these funds were sent and used to facilitate specific violations of state law. In Georgia, it claims that this money was used to pay ballot harvesters, deputize and pay political activists to manage ballots, and consolidate the vote counting centers into urban areas to facilitate the movement of hundreds of thousands of questionable ballots in secrecy without legally required bipartisan observation. Over in Pennsylvania, the money from Zuckerberg led to Democratic strongholds taking steps to let voters cure or fix ballots, things that were not allowed in Republican-dominated areas, basically creating a two-tiered voting system. According to the former Kansas Attorney General, Democratic strongholds with Zuckerberg money actually cured absentee ballots that were flawed, contrary to Pennsylvania law, while Republican strongholds refused to lie and in addition didn't have the resources to cure ballots because they did not have Zuckerberg funding. Now, according to agreements between the center and the city of Philadelphia that we here at the Epic Times were able to review, the center agreed to pay $10 million to help the city run the general election, citing the pandemic as the main reason. Which sounds altruistic, but listen to this. According to the lawsuit, ballot boxes that were funded by the center were densely placed in Delaware County, which is right outside of Philadelphia and leans heavily Democrat. But very few ballot boxes were set up in the 59 counties that lean for Trump. Also, they allege that the consolidation of polling places was done in a way that disenfranchised Republican strongholds. Now, we reached out to Philadelphia city commissioners, we reached out to the center, and we reached out to Mark Zuckerberg for comment, but we have yet to hear back. Now, this story here really highlights, at least to me, the need for an honest media in this country that reports things accurately. Because this might be the very first time that you're hearing about this giant $400 million donation given from Mark Zuckerberg to this center to help facilitate the elections across this country, because the legacy media outlets in this country are not covering it. And the media that do cover it likely have a hard time sharing the story on Facebook. I wonder why. Now, we'll throw the links to these articles in the description box below this video, and I would highly recommend that you dive into them yourself because they go into so much more detail. And if you haven't already, smash that like button. When you hit that like button that's below this video, it forces the YouTube algorithm to share this video out to thousands of more people, potentially letting the truth be known far and wide. And people are hungry for the truth. We started this channel just a week and a half ago, and we have already grown to over 100,000 subscribers. Soon we'll be at 200,000. That shows to me that people are hungry for accurate, honest reporting that doesn't spin the facts and report things honestly as they truly are. So thank you for joining us. If you haven't subscribed already, I would highly recommend that you do. That way you can get this honest reporting directly into your YouTube feed. And if you've already subscribed, just make sure that you're still subscribed because YouTube seems to be removing our fans willy-nilly. Now until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.